Welcome to Southgate. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to make sure that if you're joining in with us today, that you're connected with a local church. We hope and we pray that if you're in the North Grenville or North Dundas area, you're connected to Southgate in a physical way, that you're coming out to services and joining in on the events that are happening in person. We value community, and if you're interested in joining ours in a greater way, you can sign up for the email that goes out bi-weekly. You can follow us on our socials and check in on the website to see what's going on in person and in our community. If you want to participate in what we're doing by giving financially, follow the links below. We hope and we pray that this service is a benefit to you and your walk with Jesus.
It's dangerous business walking out your front door. Now, depending on your background and depending on your journey, this phrase may elicit one of three responses. You might think of absolutely nothing. This phrase is meaningless to me. And those of you that this is your case, I feel for you. And I hope that someday this phrase will have some deep meaning for you. The other two categories might be, you might be thinking, if you are a fellow millennial who grew up in the kind of post-hardcore music scene, punk scene like I did, you're probably thinking of Under Oath. You're thinking of these guys and the famous song by that same name that they wrote. For those of you who are kind of Tolkien nerds out there, you're probably thinking of the words that Sam said to Frodo before they embarked on their epic adventure chronicled in The Lord of the Rings. See, Samwise said this to speak of the unpredictability that begins when someone steps into a new adventure. Speaking of adventures, is anyone considering taking the plunge into some Star Wars? I wish May the 4th be with you on this day that we are recording this for. See, we love adventure. We love unpredictability. We love the stepping into a new adventure. See, my boys and I, we've been reading through this fantastic series where I've been caught off guard by the twists and the turns that the adventure takes. And typically what happens after I've read a chapter for the night is my kids will perk up and they'll go, "Can we read one more? Can we just read one more?" There's something about these types of stories, I think, that resonate with our own experience. And we want to engage with them more and more. What's fascinating to me is that as we step out of the season of Easter, and as we were reminded and encouraged last week to linger a little longer in the shadow of the cross and the wonder of the empty tomb, we need to realize that these events, the cross and the tomb, the empty tomb, are an invitation to the greatest adventure that you and I will ever embark on. When Jesus talks about this adventure, he describes it as being born again. That the beginning of this adventure, the walking out your front door of this adventure, is handing over the keys to your heart, committing a new life with him. And here's how Jesus described what that adventure actually looks like. John 3:8 says, "The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from and where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit." There's some amount of unpredictability that life submitted to Jesus will look like, particularly to the outside world. I think this is largely because the world expects us to move selfishly and in selfish ways, motivated internally by our own desires. But when we are motivated externally by the Spirit, we move with love for one another. Now, I speak about this unpredictability of the adventure that you and I are called on to journey with Jesus. I talk about this uniqueness of our journey so that I can completely contradict it. Because the reality is that although there is unpredictability and there is a unique journey that we are all called on, and there is a unique journey ahead of each and every one of us, we're not left without a roadmap. We're not left without a roadmap. See, beginning with the early church fathers like Origen and the Desert Fathers, and into the Middle Ages with Saint Teresa of Avila, on to John Wesley, one of the founders of the Wesleyan and Methodist movements, leaders within the church have noticed patterns in the lives of believers that have shaped various roadmaps. Now, when you look at each of these roadmaps, they all have a very similar look and feel to them. Within the last 10 years of ministry, I've been studying a few of these modern versions of these roadmaps. In particular, I found 3 books to be very helpful. Number 1 would be Eternity is Now in Session. This is a really good book. It's got like modern language, and John Ortberg is a fantastic writer. It's very engaging. Mansions of the Heart really connects to a lot of the old traditions that are found in a lot of these roadmaps. But the one that I have found most particularly helpful has been The Critical Journey. And this is a book that I've been studying with a group of people. And we've been developing a framework for our church and discipleship. And I'm so excited that in this series, we get to unpack some of this roadmap together. And we get to talk about what a life with Jesus can look like for us as followers of him. And I will talk to you more about this journey throughout this series. But for now, I would like to introduce you to the framework that has been presented in Hagberg and Gulick's Critical Journey, the book that we've got up here. And we're aiming to adopt this here at Southgate as a discipleship tool for walking with people through their own journey. Now remember how we started this off. Everyone's journey is still unique, but in many ways it will have similar stops along the way. One of the things that struck me as I've looked through these various stages of faith is how much I resonated, or the stages themselves resonated with my own journey and the other people that I have walked alongside with. I've seen this not just in my own life, but I've seen this in the lives of those I have had the privilege and honor to walk with as well. So before I jump into a brief overview of each of these stages, I would like to note a few things. Number one, the stages are progressive while also being fluid. And what I mean by this is that although the stages are labeled 1 through 6, it does not mean that you necessarily move on from a stage. They are fluid. We revisit them at various points in our life. So if you find yourself in one stage today, it doesn't mean... So, for example, if you find yourself in stage 1, it doesn't mean that you've never been to stage 3. It just means that you find yourself in stage 1 today. So they're fluid, but they're also progressive. And what that means is that you will not jump from stage 1 to stage 6. In order to get to stage 6, you must go through stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, as well as the wall, which we will talk about as well. Number 2 thing that we need to remember before we get into this, stage does not indicate nearness to God. One of the things that you'll notice is that in the diagram that I'm going to use, we use a circle. And that's because as you go around the circle, you do not go further away from the center. So as you progress, you actually don't move any further or closer to the center. The circle is used to indicate that at every stage we still have the same access to God. Which actually leads me to the third point and thing that we need to remember. Stages simply indicate how we are relating to God. So it's not necessarily about stage 3 being better than stage 1. It's that stage 3 is different than stage 1. And this is why I think it's so important that each and every one of us that we understand the stage that we are at. It gives us a framework for understanding our current relationship with God and how we relate to Him. But it also gives us the ability to understand changes in our relationship with God. Because I know for a lot of people, when I sit down with them and when I talk to them about the state of their relationship with God, they get this sense that things are different. And for a lot of people, that can equate to, I must be moving further away from God. It can be disorienting. And so this is a huge key to understanding these stages, that transitioning from one stage to another can feel disorienting. And at times, in certain stages, we can even feel like we are losing our faith. And so the encouragement here is that you are not necessarily losing your faith because you are experiencing God differently. It means that you have moved into a different stage of faith. And you are currently experiencing God in a different way. So lastly, number 4, and this is the tough one. We cannot move ourselves into the next stage on our own willpower. This is one of the most difficult aspects of understanding these stages. We must allow ourselves to be led by God into the next stage. It's very easy when we hear, particularly about stages 5 and 6, to want to get there. I know that my reaction when I first heard about a lot of these stages, I was like, oh, I want to get to stage 5. I want to get to stage 6. I want to get there fast. I want to figure out what's next. What do I got to do? Thankfully, a mentor of mine simply encouraged me, you don't get to decide when that happens. You just have to get comfortable knowing and trusting God in the stage that you are currently in. And He will direct you when you are ready. There are things that we can do to prepare ourselves and get more comfortable, but ultimately the movement is all initiated by God. And so very quickly, with these things in mind, we are going to talk about the stages of faith. So if we look here, we see that the whole point is a relationship with God. The journey that we are on is a relationship with God. And so God is at the center of our circle, as we talked about before. And so we get to stage 1, which is the recognition of God. This is the entry point. This is the point in our lives where we say, I understand that there is something greater than me. There is something bigger than me. There is something behind the purpose and movement of the universe. And so stage 1 is often described as a stage of feeling in awe of who God is. Stage 2 is the life of discipleship. And this is where we become hungry. We want to know more. It's all about learning. It's all about things that we can be taking in, how we can grow in knowledge. And the life of discipleship is a life marked by a keen desire to know more about God so that you can go deeper and deeper into your relationship with Him. Stage 3 is the productive life. Now that we have a deep understanding of who God is, we just want to serve Him. We want to do what we can to build His kingdom up. And so at this stage, we are going to find the most meaning and purpose in our relationship with God by what we can do for God. This is where we begin to get involved in church life. We start volunteering. We start doing outreach groups. We go on missions trips. All of these things, it's our relationship with God is experienced by doing things with and for Him. And then we come to stage 4, which is the journey inward. And this is a very difficult stage because this stage is often brought on by crisis. It leads to a lot of doubt, insecurity. It's at this stage that we take a deep dive into ourselves. We begin to understand the people that we are, the people that we have become, and the people that we are becoming. It's at this stage that a lot of people enter therapy. They begin to ask questions about their past, trauma, how it affects them personally, and how it affects their relationship with God. At this stage, the way that you feel closer and connected to God is actually through self-discovery. Who is the unique person that God has created me to be? And as you discover more and more about the unique gifting and the way that you have been created for God, you find that you are growing closer to Him. But this is often the stage where doubt, what people call deconstruction, comes. And the difficult thing about stage 4 is that a lot of people think that at stage 4, because they're experiencing their relationship with God so much more differently, they believe that they are losing their faith, when in fact God is actually taking them deeper into their faith. And so this is one of the most encouraging, and I would argue this is potentially one of the biggest reasons we need to study these stages, because as people get to stage 4, they often decide that they want to get off the journey completely. In fact, Hagberg and Gulick say that the majority of people do not make it through stage 4. And that's largely because a lot of people don't know what's going on. So part of the reason we've got this roadmap is for those people, for you. If you happen to be at stage 4, listen, you are not losing your faith. You're simply taking a deeper dive inward. And God wants to find you there. And so this is typically where we also meet the wall. And the wall, though on this diagram, seems a little bit small and insignificant. The wall is one of the hardest places we will find ourselves in this journey. It's described by St. John of the Cross as the dark night of the soul. It is a time where we just feel depleted. We feel empty. We feel so burnt out. And so the wall is something that we either meet on our way to stage 4, as we are going through stage 4, during, after stage 4. It's somewhere around here. And this is why it's not really labeled as a stage. Sometimes it's the product of burnout from stage 3. And then we move on to stage 5. The journey outward. And what I would say about stage 5 is that at stage 5, it's as if you've done a whole bunch of work internally. And stage 5 is the transformation of that work. It's the outer working of all the inner work that has been going on in stage 4. Stage 5 is a almost healed and renewed version of stage 3, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But in stage 5, you have a more concise and more direct image of what it means to live out your purpose because of everything that's happened at stage 4. And so people at stage 5, they tend to look like they're not interested in the important things in life because they have a very, very locked in view of what God has for their life. And that can seem strange to people on the outside. But for those who are experiencing it, it is extremely fulfilling. You're living in your purpose more directly. And so then we move on to stage 6. And what Hagberg and Gulick say about the transition from stage 5 to stage 6 is almost seamless, because the two are so similar. But at stage 6, we enter into what is called the life of love. And this is what some of the early fathers, they called union with Christ, union with God. What we like to call here, uniting our lives with Jesus. This is the fulfillment of all of that. You are walking so in step with God that you are just living a life of love. It does not mean that you don't experience hardship. It doesn't mean that you don't experience doubts. What it means is that the biggest thing that you are relating to in life and in your relationship with God is love. That you are centered on and fulfilled in the life of love with God. And so this is the journey that we are about to embark on, and we're going to take time to unpack each of these stages in greater detail. I believe the encouragement that we are meant to receive, at the very least, as we discover this journey together, is that our faith is dynamic. It is ever changing, ever growing and maturing. We are never far away from God. He's always there at the center. At each of these stages, we are no further from God. And the encouragement is that we can find ways to foster growth in one another and journey along together. As I think about this journey and these stages and how it all works, I'm drawn to the image of my relationship with my kids. I know from my own relationship with my parents that my relationship with my kids is going to change. My love for them will not. My love for them will not change. I will always love them, and I will always love them to the same degree that I love them now. And they will always have access to me. But the way that we relate to one another will change. It will progress. It will have moments of revisiting the stages that we have been at and that we are currently at. But things will change. And that's good. And it's beautiful. And this is the invitation to you and I today to enter into the journey. And for those of you that are already on this journey, for you to grow in your relationship and to grow in your understanding of God. So as we prepare for this series, there's going to be a little bit of time in between. I hope that we can prepare our hearts in this way. That we can take some next steps. We can, number one, take time to review the stages as we study them. Really think about some of these stages and how they relate to your journey. Whether they are stages that you might be looking forward to or stages that you might look back on with fondness. Or identifying the stage that you are currently in. Take time to unpack these stages. And I want to point you to a resource that we do have that maybe you aren't aware of. On our website, we have access to a study guide that we put out weekly. You can find that study guide on the Grow section. There's a tab that says Grow, and underneath that you will find resources. And as you click on the resources, you will find all of the study guides that we've had for the past couple of series. Number two, we need to be ruthlessly honest as we go through this series. The temptation is typically to put yourself further along the journey than you actually are. The authors, I believe, have pointed out rightly that most church-going folk will find themselves in stages 1 to 3. Unfortunately, as we said before, most do not feel comfortable with stage 4. And so they leave the church, they leave the faith, or they revert back to earlier stages. And the authors argue that most people on this journey do not make it to stage 5 and 6. There are some of you that are listening here today, I'm sure, that are at stages 5 or 6. There are a few of you. But we have to be truly honest with ourselves if we are going to engage with these stages in a meaningful way. I can tell you with all honesty and sincerity that I am not at stage 5 or 6. And so we must be ruthlessly honest with ourselves. Which leads me to the last step. Begin to ask God to reveal to you where you are today. This can be such a life-giving revelation for us. See, in identifying our stage, we begin to understand our needs and the